I tell you, if I got to predict, I probably lean a little bit towards Tszyu because he's been active and he's the guy that I have at least seen.
I would lean towards Tim, even though he's been through some.
Yeah, I think Spence beat him.
When two world-class welterweights collide, the experts start weighing in. Errol Spence and Tim Tszyu bring contrasting styles and career-defining stakes, and plenty of unanswered questions, while Paulie Malignaggi highlights the biggest unknown. After a lengthy layoff, how Spence will step into the ring against an active and battle-tested Tszyu, a referendum on where they stand in boxing's new era.
I think there's a lot of curiosity regarding Spence and Tszyu. You know, two guys have solidified themselves at world level in recent years, but there's a lot of question marks about the way they're, you know, the condition that they're in as far as how close or how far from their prime they are at in this matchup. With Tszyu, we've seen him 2 wins on the trot, you know, working on some things, getting himself back together, getting some confidence back together, but he's changed his team again, whether it's for the better or for the worse on fight night.
Malignaggi then shifts to the changes within Tszyu's camp, pointing to Jeff Fennick's arrival as a potentially pivotal addition. His read is that Tszyu already has the technical foundation, but has lacked a certain impulse, something Fennick's fighting pedigree and warrior mindset could help reignite as Tszyu looks to bounce back from adversity.
I think Jeff can be a motivator in the corner because Jeff was a mentally tough, strong fighter. And I think possibly that maybe what Tim is missing is the sort of go-getter attitude. He's technically good, but he's looked a little bit lackluster in his aggression of late, you know? So if I had to pick something that Tim may be able to work on a bit more.
When it comes time to pick a winner, Malignaggi leans towards Tszyu, and his reasoning centers on activity versus rust. He admits he can't look past how thoroughly Spence was outclassed in his most recent fight, nor ignore the fact that Spence hasn't laced up gloves competitively in 3 years. That's why, ultimately backs Tszyu to get the job done.
I tell you, if I got to predict, I probably lean a little bit towards Tszyu because he's been active and he's the guy that I have at least seen up close in the last few years. Again, Spence, 3 years ago, I can't get that beating out of my head. And he's not exactly had a lot of luck outside the ring either, with a bad car accident and the detached retina surgery. I will reiterate again, Spence was dropped with a jab from Terrence Crawford in that fight. The first knockdown was on a jab, so I don't know what kind of punch resistance he has left. Granted, that could be said for either guy, but Spence was at welterweight.
Shifting focus to the bigger picture, Paulie Malignaggi points out that even though both fighters share the same promotional home in PBC, the real intrigue lies in Spence's uncertain current state. He suggests this could be a case of two fighters meeting at exactly the right or wrong moment in their careers, turning it into a fascinating gamble.
Listen, 2 and 2 makes 4, right? You use your common sense. That Tim is a PBC guy in the States. These guys are PBC guys. You look for the correct possible matchup at this stage in their careers. You know, it starts to make sense, you know? So, you know,
How do you see it?
How do I see it? I don't know. I mean, Spence hasn't fought in decades, feels like, you know, even Charlo. So I don't know. How do you know what's left out of those guys mentally, physically? You don't know, you know? Obviously with Tim, there's a lot of question marks. He's just come back with a win, but at least Tim is trying to stay busy and active. With those guys, it's hard to say because you haven't seen them yet.
Bringing his own first-hand experience to the conversation, Sean Porter, who's shared the ring with Spence himself, calls this a can't-miss matchup for both men involved. Porter frames the contest as a legitimate toss-up, though he gives a slight nod to Tszyu, given how much more recently he's been active compared to Spence's extended absence.
Tim Tszyu, Errol Spence.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? Because that's wild if it was to happen.
I think that's a beautiful fight for both guys. You know, I kind of know this from seeing Keith Thurman try to come back after injuries and things like that. Keith didn't want to come back against a no-name, you know, but he didn't want to come back against the biggest names, you know. This is a fight right here where both these guys have significant names. Their in-ring experiences haven't been the best lately, and, you know, truthfully, I think that this could be a 50-50 fight. If anything, I would lean towards Tim, even though he's been through some crashes of his own recently, pun intended.
Rounding out his analysis, Butler throws his support behind Spence, framing it as a necessary bounce-back moment for him. He acknowledges that Terrence Crawford handed Spence a rough and lopsided defeat, and that the recovery process has taken longer than expected. Still, Butler doesn't count out Tszyu. Upsets and unpredictable outcomes are simply part of the territory.
About Tim Tszyu and Errol Spence.
I got Spence.
Ooh, tell me why.
I got Spence. Well, Spence needed to come back, you know what I'm saying? I mean, Terrence did put it on him kind of bad. It took a while for him to come back, you know what I'm saying? But Tim Tszyu, you know, I mean, shit happens. They both need each other, but I want to see Spence with the great comeback. That's why I'm going with Spence.
Were you surprised how he lost to Crawford so convincingly?
For sure. I thought it would have been a lot more, a hell of a better fight. I didn't think I knew Terrence would beat him, but I didn't know that fashion though. That fashion was unpredictable, but the win was predictable.
Tszyu had trouble with Fundora, but do you think that was a style issue?
Style make fights. Styles make fight. That height on that motherfucker, bro.
Turning to a first-hand account, Coach Kenny Ellis reflects on what he personally saw at the weigh-in, ahead of the Crawford fight. He recalls noticing Spence favoring one leg as he walked, and appearing physically diminished overall, an observation that lends real weight to the rumors circulating about a rib injury going into that bout.
Let me go back to the Terrence fight. Me and Calvin was in Vegas, and we was at the weigh-in. And I told Calvin, man, something ain't right. Errol don't look right. He was walking with a slight limp, like he was holding back some pain, so it might be some, some truth to that rib injury. I was like, man, he don't look like himself. The way he was walking, But he took the fight, But as far as the
Offering his own prediction, Ellis makes it clear he thinks Spence would handle Tszyu with relative ease, expecting him to overwhelm his opponent and close the show somewhere around the 7th or 8th round. Yet Ellis tempers that confidence with a personal caveat. Given Spence's health concerns, part of him would rather see him retire from the sport for good.
Errol gonna walk through him. I don't want to see him fight again, but if he's gonna fight, I think he'll beat Tim Tszyu. I don't see Tim Tszyu like you think of his dad. They keep pushing him because they're thinking of his dad. He ain't nothing like his dad,
Yeah.
They keep pushing him, but he's not his dad.
You see Spence stopping him?
Yeah. Inside 7, 8.
Do you feel like the Charlo fight will be next because of all that tension they got?
Shifting to a more personal note, Kenny Ellis opens up about his genuine worry over the possibility of Spence stepping back into the ring. Out of respect for the fighter, he says he'd honestly prefer to see Spence walk away from boxing for good, pointing to concerns about the cumulative damage from past accidents and other lingering health issues.
I wish Errol would stay retired, man. He one of my favorite fighters just because of that. That's gonna always be that accident, the head injuries, losing his teeth, and I hear he got other stuff going on in his face. I don't know how true it is, but I don't want to see him get hurt,
Yeah, it would be tough. It would be tough on the sport as well.
And then everybody would be like, "Oh shit, it's the commissioner's fault. Oh man, they shouldn't have let him." Shit crazy.
Weighing in with his own take, Eddie Hearn calls this a compelling matchup for Spence, competitive, but not without real danger. He points out how perception around Tszyu has shifted. Once regarded as a near unbeatable force, recent losses have led some to now view him as just another name on the record, rather than the threat he used to represent.
Yeah, I actually think it's a good fight. I think Tim, for a while now, Tim has been a much avoided fighter because, there was this kind of perception of him that he was this monster. But the reality is he's had a couple of defeats and people look upon him now as a kind of opponent. And that's what Errol Spence's team are doing. But I think Tim's more than an opponent. I think he's a very good fighter and I think he's got a lot about him. And I think it's a very dangerous fight for Errol Spence to come back to.
Wrapping up his thoughts, Eddie Hearn reiterates that this promises to be a genuinely captivating clash and offers his sincere support for Tszyu heading into it. Hearn stresses that he's still rooting for his success, framing it as part of a bigger picture investment in growing the sport across Australia.
2 years out of the ring, obviously the car crash, the retina problems over the years. And yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting and I wish Tim all the best. Again, not on our team, but with our hopes to build Australian boxing, hopefully he can go over there and get a big win.
Nice one. Thank you, Eddie. Always appreciate your time, mate.
Cheers, mate. Good to talk to you. See you soon.
Terrence Crawford offers his own read on how this fight would play out, giving the nod to Spence given where both men currently stand in their careers.
Yeah, I think Spence beat him. At this point in both of their career, I think Spence beat him.
Continuing on, Crawford opens up and sided with Spence, explaining it simply comes down to who he personally has faith in, while being careful to note that he's not the one stepping into the ring and can't control what actually happens once the bell rings. He keeps his message straightforward, wishing Tim well and reminding him that ultimately it comes down to going out there and fighting.
I'm not the judge. You know, I'm not the one to say, you know, what he can and what he can't do. Me and my boy Tszyu had a little wager on if him and Spence fought each other, who will win. And I had to back Spence because that's what I believe in. But, you know, I'm not the one fighting, so at the end of the day, I'm not the one that controls who win or lose.
What could you tell Tim, or what could you tell him about a Spence fight if he was a future opponent?
I can't tell him nothing. I just tell him good luck, train hard, and go in there and fight.
Joel Camilleri opens by calling this an enormous fight, pointing to Spence's resume as a former pound-for-pound great and stressing just how big a step up it is for Tszyu to share the ring with a fighter of that caliber. Stepping into one against a name like Spence instantly raises the stakes for Tsyu's career.
I think it's a massive fight. Errol Spence, man, was one of the pound-for-pound before he lost to the pound-for-pound. And Tim Tszyu, losers, down, up, and now he's going for one of the best of recent years, so it's a massive fight.
From there, Camilleri highlights Jeff Fenech's value behind the scenes, explaining that having Fenech handle promotional duties and media obligations frees Tszyu up to pour his full attention into training and performance, without added distraction. He notes that this kind of support system can make a real difference in the final weeks of camp, when focus matters most.
Tim doesn't need somebody to teach him technique or whatever, maybe a bit of defensive movement or whatever, but what Jeff brings to the table is he backs him. He backs him. If someone's doing Tim's head in, Tim changed over the last few years. He started actually talking, and the camera's not for Tim. He started to talk and try to start arguments and that. Jeff will say, leave it to me. Jeff will come in, make the phone calls, don't talk to Tim, cut it out of the way. Also, he's a good self-promoter. Jeff's going to promote Tim massive, so he's going to bring him more likes, more money, and that's what he wants, and backing.
When it comes to picking a winner, Camilleri admits it's a genuinely tough call. He respects what Spence brings to the table, but he's firmly in Tsyu's corner, hoping to see him win, though he wouldn't stake everything, given how unpredictable a fight like this can be. It's the kind of matchup where hope and logic don't always line up.
Spence is an ex-welterweight, but it's not even about weight, it's about timing, and Spence's got great timing and power. Tim's got good accuracy. Well, maybe he'll increase his power at middleweight, but I just think that it's a dangerous fight, and we all know that.
Who wins it?
Oh.
It's a hard one.
You know, it's a hard one.
I can't really give an opinion on it.
I can't. I want Tim to win. I really do want him to win. If you told me to bet my house on it, you know, I'm not going to put my house on Tim. I think Spence, at his best, was a better fighter than Tim, but I'm 100% Team Tim Tszyu, and I hope he destroys him.
Turning to Robert Garcia's perspective, he unpacks why he thinks Spence is bypassing a warm-up fight altogether. He shows concern surrounding such an extended time away from competition, paired with how Spence looked in his fight against Crawford, and stresses whether Spence still has the physical sharpness needed to compete at this level against Tszyu.
That's my opinion, because I think when it comes to boxing, a fighter that's been out for 3-4 years and wants to come back, I think it's just very normal for anybody to take a tune-up fight. And I said, look, from Spence last performance against Crawford, who made it look so easy, Spence looked bad in that fight. He looked really bad. And a lot of people thought he was gonna be able to beat Crawford. A lot of people favored him.
Adding to that point, he suggests a fighter returning from a 3 or 4 year absence would normally look to ease back in with a lower stakes bout first. But he theorizes Spence may be avoiding that route out of fear that a defeat in a smaller, lower paying fight would carry all the downside with none of the reward. Spence guarantees himself a substantial payout, regardless of the added strategic risk that comes with facing top tier opposition right out of the gate.
If a fighter is planning on making a comeback and not getting a tune-up fight, this is my opinion, and I could be wrong, and hopefully I'm wrong, because I think Spence could put up some great fights if I'm wrong. But if a fighter is coming back after 3 or 4 years layoff, and you look horrible in your last performance, and you're coming back straight into a solid fight, then maybe he feels that he might fail in a tune-up fight. And if he fails in a tune-up fight for a low payday, and he goes straight into a big fight where he's gonna make a couple $1 million.
Garcia frames it as his own prediction from here. He believes Tszyu is far from a safe bet either, pointing to the defeats he's suffered in his last few outings. That's what makes this such a genuine test for Spence in Garcia's eyes, whether he still has the tools to hang with the best the weight class has to offer. If Spence steps in and thoroughly outclasses his opponent, it will stand as real proof that he's genuinely back and still belongs among the sport's elite.
I'm just giving my opinion. I just think that if he's going straight into a big fight, and look, and Tim Tszyu is also in the same kind of questionable. How much does he have left? He's taken a few knockouts, losses that have been pretty tough for him, you know, and some losses that were pretty bad. So it could be a good fight, but does Spence have enough to compete against the top 154 pounders? Well, we'll see. If he dominates and beats the shit out of Tim Tszyu, then he's back and he's strong and happy for him.
Tszyu himself weighs in, making clear just how eager he is to get in the ring with Spence. He sees the extended time Spence has spent away from competition as an opening he intends to exploit fully, and he frames this as exactly the kind of major test he's been waiting to take on. There's no hesitation in his voice, just a fighter who genuinely believes this is his moment to seize.
No, so it was distracting, but I did try and block it out. I did the best I possibly could.
Mate, Spence's reaction, he put out that tweet. You mentioned it at the press conference, but a few hours later, how do you respond to his tweet?
What did he say again? I didn't really understand.
He said, I forget exactly, but he said something like, you know, you think you're the man, but I'll show you how it's done, or something along those lines.
Man, look, I can't wait to get it on with him, honestly. He hasn't fought in a long time, and I do want to expose that, you know? What did he say?
Yeah, he said, you think shit sweet, do you so bad?
Oh man, he's got no idea. He's got no idea. He's going to be in for a hard fight, you know, because a style like me, it always presents challenges to a lot of people.
Tszyu continues by breaking down exactly what kind of shift Spence is walking into by moving up in weight to face him. He points to the jump in raw punching power Spence will feel compared to what he dealt with at welterweight, along with the added glove weight that comes with the move. Tszyu also stresses how tough a task this is for anyone stepping back in after 3 years away, positioning himself as about as difficult a comeback opponent as Spence could draw.
Yeah, just harder punches, different gloves. It was an 8-ounce. It's not 8-ounce gloves anymore. It's up to 10 ounce, and just a different feeling, you know. Coming off a 3-year layoff, I'm a bad guy to choose off the first go.
He called you trash at one point as well.
Yeah, he also lost money from me as well. So it's just typical, man.
With a direct message aimed straight at Spence, Tszyu doesn't hold back. He points out how much time has passed for the veteran and states plainly that he plans to be the one who finally closes the book on Spence's career for good. It's less a prediction than a promise, delivered with the confidence of a fighter who's already made peace with what he intends to do.
Just the time is ticking. Father time is slowly coming for him. Retirement is coming up, and what a pleasure for me to be able to be the man to be able to do that.
Shifting to a more skeptical take, Greg pushes back on Tszyu's attempt to use Sebastian Fundora's win over Keith Thurman as a roadmap for beating Spence. He argues the comparison doesn't hold up, pointing out that Fundora's unusual size and reach give him tools Tszyu simply doesn't have, making that same path to victory unlikely to translate.
I think who knows what's really going to happen, but using the comparison of what we saw Fundora and Thurman to Errol Spence and Tim Tszyu, that is a bad analogy, son. And the reason why it's a bad analogy is we've seen Sebastian Fundora. Fundora is a fighter that is ascending after the Brian Mendoza fight. He has been ascending. To me, Tim Tszyu was winning that first fight.
Greg then turns to the bigger risk hanging over this whole comeback. Spence stepping back in at 36 years old after 3 years away. He voices real doubt about whether the dominant version of Spence still exists, and whether that version, whatever's left of it, can withstand a hungry, motivated fighter like Tszyu at his best.
I'm concerned about any fighter that's been out of the ring for 3 years. I'm sorry, you cannot be the same fighter you were 3 years ago, specifically when you're 36 years old. It just does not work like that, man. It just doesn't. And so Errol's gonna come back and we're gonna get a rusty version of Errol. And I don't know if Errol's really gonna do Tim Tszyu so bad. I think Errol can beat Tim Tszyu. I think the version of Errol that we saw back in 2018 and 2019 can beat Tim Tszyu, but when we started seeing that less active Errol.
While Cobbs goes in with a lighthearted jab at Spence's appearance, pointing out the noticeable change in his hair and added weight, and joking that he looks like someone who's been completely off the grid for a while.
He just looks very different.
Talk to me. Well, obviously the whole hair, his hair looks completely different. He also weighs a lot more.
His face looked like he was training somewhere in the desert with no water and no food. Like, this motherfucker, he escaped the grid and fucking fell off the side of the planet and somehow found his way back home. You know what I mean? My man looked like Moses that got banished.
Regardless, he follows that up with a real prediction. If Spence can get back to the form that once defined him, Cobbs believes he'd stop Tszyu, potentially in a fight even more explosive than his previous clashes. Nobody's calling this an easy night for either man, and that uncertainty is exactly what makes it a must-watch. Whether Spence turns back the clock or Tszyu writes the biggest upset of his career, one thing's for sure, this fight will tell us a lot about where both men truly stand. If you enjoyed breaking this one down with us, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a breakdown like this one.